and welcome to Just One More Cookie, a podcast about two sisters' journeys toward complete health and wellness. We definitely don't have it all figured out, and we're still in the thick of it, but we are enjoying the ride. We'd love for you to come and join us for just one more cookie. Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just One More Cookie. I am Abby.
And I'm Amy.
And we are so excited that you guys are here with us today. We have a really awesome topic that I know is really near and dear to our hearts, something that we have been talking about for a long time. So hopefully this will really help. It'll help us. It'll help others. But before we get into it, we just want to remind you guys, if you could please follow us. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you could leave us a review, like, comment, subscribe. We really want to open up and broaden our horizons, get more people involved in our community. We also have an email address. It is hard. One More Cookie Pod. pod@gmail.com. So send us an email if you have any topic ideas. We are always looking for those. A lot of our ideas just come organically from us talking throughout the week. But if you have something you'd want us to talk about, you want to hear about, let us know. If you want to share some of your success stories, we'd really love to hear from you. And just, it helps us to know that we're not in this by ourselves, that we're reaching other people. So let's get into it. So this week, we are going to be talking about breaking the cycle of obesity. Now, I do want to, we are going to be delving into a lot of family issues because this becomes a family problem. It becomes a generational problem. And I do want to kind of, before we get started, kind of just put a little disclaimer and just wanted to let Amy and I do not have kids. So we are going to be speaking from a perspective of a child who grew up as obese as a child and continue that into adulthood. So we are going to address things from that aspect, but we are also going to try to speak to parents and kind of address things that we as kids wish that our parents had done, things that we have researched that we think would be practical help. And spoiler alert, later on, we are going to have a special guest with us. We're so excited. Yeah. Momma Gail is going to join us. So she will give us her nuggets of wisdom just from the parent side of that. So let's get into it. So breaking the cycle of obesity. So let's talk about what contributing factors are to obesity. And we are going to kind of address this as childhood because a lot of times that is where it starts. Not necessarily, but for us, that's where it started. So that's kind of where we're going to bring that to. So first thing, obvious, that contributes to obesity is our diet, especially in this day and age. I don't know. I mean, if you're a conspiracy theorist, I think the government is trying to kill us. And they're trying to give us diabetes and hypertension. Mm-hmm. Big Pharma wants us to get more drugs. Big Agra is trying to feed us GMOs. It's just, I digress. But as we all know, there is so much garbage that is in our grocery stores today, so much that we are eating that is filled with sugar, so much that is unhealthy. So huge portion of that is our diets.
Yeah, I think too, like the readily available, like the low hanging fruit are, and it's not fruit. It's usually like the really cheap buy one, get one. And it's always like very high calorie snacks that like don't go a long way. I mean, if you're like most people, you could probably eat a bag of chips in one day, but it's like the things that we are filling our cabinets with are the things that are low cost, which are usually the high calorie, a lot of preservatives, and easy, right? Because we're busier. So because we're busier, it's like, I want something fast. I want something quick. And that usually means something very high calorie and not good for you. And then compound upon that. And I know schools are trying to get better, but I remember when I was in high school, my lunch was a piece of Tony's pizza, 2 chocolate chip cookies, and a Fruitopia. Do you remember Fruitopias? Which is literally just sugar water, right? in that meal alone, we're talking at least 1,600 to 1,700 calories. And that was just lunch. And then our breakfast were toaster strudels, right?
Yeah.
Like the literally you got a packet of icing to put on top of a Pop-Tart-ish thing. So now we're probably talking about, by the time I got home for dinner, I'm already capping 2,000 calories. Then you add in snacks, because by the time we get home, I've had that.
Starving.
Yeah, because you've had that like non-calorie dense. So I'm filling my body with like jalapeno poppers, cheese sticks, which we had available at the house, which when I think about it, you're putting a vat of oil and frying cheese. This is all before dinner, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that this is an uncommon thing with many kids. It's like within your home are really bad snacks, but then when you go out of your home, you're already being trained to like the high calorie things. So it's like at school or when you're just going out and purchasing snacks, it's you're continuously just filling your body filled with preservatives and things that are like you're going to be hungry in an hour.
Right, exactly. Because it's all empty calories. And then your body, you're feeding it all of the stuff that is not food. It's not nutrition. So then you're still hungry because your body says, I don't have what I need. So we're filling our bodies with all of this junk and it's just empty calories. It's a bad, vicious cycle.
Yeah. And I think time is a big thing too for parents. It's like, what do I do that I can just give them quickly? So if you're hungry, just go grab it. And really it's creating more damage, like this quick stuff, even like fast food. Like if I get home and my parents are like, man, I didn't have time to cook. So let's just go to fast food. The amount of food that is good for you and filling is like the lowest percentage when we're talking about fast food, even sit down restaurants. You're talking about very high calorie food. So this is what we are defaulting to. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is just lack of exercise. Now more than ever, we are a sedentary world, because when most kids are getting home, it is television, it is iPads, it's phones. And then compound upon that, they've been at school for 8 hours where they mostly have been sitting, which if you've been doing the research, they're now saying that sitting is the new smoking, right? Like you just sitting down. And we talked about this a lot in the episode where we talked about Let's Get Physical. We were talking about physical activity, just sitting all day, right? It's like the lack of movement that most families are having. So when you're coming home, you're not even working it off. So the fact that I had, by the time I got home, over 2,000 calories, I'm not coming home to then do some sort of physical activity. I'm just coming home to sit in front of a device or in front of something that's just mind numbing as the calories then begin to attach themselves to my body and I'm not burning off anything. So just a lack of movement and a lack of exercise in general becomes the norm in the majority of families.
Right. And I think that especially in this day and age, I know we as a society, it's difficult for parents to, so as when we were kids, of course, and everyone our age, they know, when you were a kid, you went outside and you stayed outside all day long. You got on your bike, you went and played with the kids in the neighborhood, and our parents, they knew where we were roundabout, but they really didn't know.
No.
And we live in a different day and age. It's much more dangerous. And I know parents are very hesitant to let their kids just wander, which I understand. I mean, I have a dog and I am paranoid to leave him unattended on his lead in the front yard because I'm afraid somebody is going to come and steal him, or he's going to get out of it somehow and run and get into the busy street and get hit by a car. So I know that fear is compounded when you have a kid. So because of that, I know it's very difficult to let your kids to create an atmosphere where they can exercise. You have to be very intentional. I know that's difficult. So, and I also think a contributing factor is just family, the way that our families are. First of all, genetically, I know there are some people, and there are some really irritating people in this world that they can eat like pigs and they're stick skinny. And that's just their makeup, their genetics. And then there are other people that they have to struggle constantly. And unfortunately, a lot of times we pass this down to our kids. So there's that aspect, just the physical genetic aspect. And then of course, we are passing down our habits, sometimes our, emotional issues we're passing down to our kids. And then because of that, those emotional issues, they're beginning to eat emotionally. And I know a lot of times you can be a bad influence on each other. I know you and I have influenced each other badly in the past, sitting there watching TV and like, well, we need to be good, but mom made some cookies since you were coming up. So we're just going to eat all these cookies. And it's like, because one person does it, you feel like it's okay. And I feel like it's very easy. Plus you're in a comfortable environment. Whereas if you're with strangers, you're not going to binge on a bunch of cookies because they're going to judge you.
Yeah.
With your family, it's like free for all. Who cares?
Right. Get the whole bowl of cookie dough and then just bring us spoons. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like family factors, even like the way that you cook, like I know, and Momma Gail will probably admit to this. She wasn't in the running for, Master Chef. She wasn't the most delicate way. I hate lemon pepper chicken and teriyaki chicken to this day because every day she'd come home with chicken breasts and that god awful bottle of lemon pepper and teriyaki seasoning. Literally, I'll gag if I have teriyaki. So that there wasn't a lot of options. So like, because of that, like we were very snack oriented. Even as I got older and I had a roommate, she was like, do you eat meals or do you just snack? And at first I was offended, like, well, how dare you? But it was very true because like the meals themselves were not the best. So I just got into the mode of snacking. So a lot of times family factors are just habits that you picked up as you were a kid that you then start to implement, and they're poor habits. So then what happens is I pick it up from my family, then I have a family, and I just keep passing it down, right? So a lot of the things that we are passing down, even health-wise, from how we're eating and living our lives, doesn't have necessarily a lot to do with us. It's just what we saw and what we were used to. Even when it comes to the psychological factors, a lot of what me and Abigail have talked about is that we struggle a lot with emotional eating because our moms struggle with emotional eating. And from her standpoint, it's like that was something she saw. So it's like everybody then just becomes a product of what you are seeing and how it's structured, right? So like food was for celebration, it was for tears, it was for funerals, and the foods that you ate weren't like, oh, I feel so sad, celery, please. It was, I hate celery. It's, oh, I feel so sad, cake, please. Oh, I feel so sad, Little Debbie snack, please. And because those things are available, that's what you end up setting up, which then becomes the psychological portion of what we're setting up in our homes that are setting us up to fail.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know there is another factor that it really is influencing is socioeconomic factors. And unfortunately, the world that we live in, the way that if you are from a poorer family, a lot of times people, minorities, inner cities, a lot of times if the money is not there, unfortunately, when you go to the grocery store, when you go to Walmart, you're not going to get an organic apple. You're going to go for, the ones that have wax all over them. You're not going to go and get the artisan bread that has the real wheat, has no, maybe it's gluten-free. You're going to go for the Wonder Bread because that's what you can afford. And I wish we had looked up the statistics because I don't know what it is, but I know that obesity, the percentage is higher in those of low socioeconomic backgrounds. So that can be a real struggle, because when you can't afford it, you need to feed your family, you're on a budget. So unfortunately, that is a huge obstacle for a lot of people to overcome.
Yeah. I want to talk about once all of these things come into play, right? And there's an environment that's created in your home where it's just very unhealthy. What happens a lot of times is that from a child's standpoint, at a very early age, you start to pack on pounds, right? And a lot of what we're going to talk about, the ramifications of that, a lot of it has to do with just the way society is set up in general. Like whether we like it or not, you are judged based on your weight. Mm-hmm. And from a kid's standpoint, and we told our stories, very personal stories in the very first episode. If you haven't listened to it, it's called Turning Point. And that's kind of where we talked about some of the things that we faced when we were younger. But once that occurs, there's some things that can happen to you socially and emotionally that you're dealing with as a child. And I remember being overweight as a child and not knowing how to navigate these emotions, right? So one of the first things that can happen is as a kid, as a child who's facing childhood obesity, you can start really facing a large level of depression, like just being sad about who you are, right? Like just being sad about the fact that the person that you see in the mirror is not accepted. And of course this doesn't just happen with overweight kids, but we're speaking from that standpoint because you can really feel a certain type of way about yourself. Now, I didn't specifically experience this because I was a tomboy, and like hygiene and how I looked were not that important. And I've said this many times before. I was a smelly girl. I was the girl outside that was just like, I looked, however, I did not care. But I know that specifically this was something that you were dealing with, Abigail, from a young age.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and also just, the depression, low self-esteem. So, and a lot of this came from bullying. And I hate to say that because I don't want to act like I'm trying to victimize myself, but kids are cruel, as we've established several times over several episodes, that kids are very cruel. And so my personality type, because I'm a feeler, I take things so to heart, and I allowed those things to define who I was. So as a result, I really withdrew into myself. I had a lot of low self-esteem, and that led to, it was a downward spiral because I felt bad about myself. I felt like, you're disgusting because you're fat, you stick out, you're worth less than everybody else. Nobody likes you. And then I start to feel depressed. I had really low self-esteem. And then I turned to emotional eating because that was my default. I couldn't feel good about myself. So let me turn to this piece of cake because that will make me feel better. Or I can get a Snickers bar and then I'll feel better for 5 minutes. And then afterwards, I go back into that depression. So of course it can cause so much emotional damage on especially a little kid.
Yeah, and I feel like from a parent's perspective, you're already sending your kid out into a relatively cruel world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of factors in general that are difficult that as a child you have to navigate, right? And I feel like the main message that we want to send out is that there's no way to parent perfectly, right? In some ways, you're going to mess up your kids. That's just the way. That's just the way it is. You're a human,
It is.
You're not perfect. And at some point we all have to get over the damage that our parents have done to us. Right. And it's just generational, and it's a part of growth. However, I feel like completely neglecting this part, which is what I've seen, and especially in our home, which is what happened, that part of parenting just kind of fell through the cracks and was completely neglected. And we were thrown into an already cruel world, and we were thrown into it being less empowered because it was like we had lost control over our own health without even being empowered to take control of it. Right. So it's like, I'm in this world and I'm being judged for something that I didn't really know was important. I don't know how to take care of my health. I don't know what a calorie is. I don't know that like I need to like move to keep my body healthy. And it's like from the standpoint of adults, it's like with that knowledge and understanding that and looking at a kid that's already overweight and struggling, this is not just about what you're doing to them health-wise that we're about to talk about, the way that that's going to follow them the rest of their lives. Not just that, but the already implications of the emotional struggle that they're going to have to go through, sometimes behind closed doors, because I didn't have a word for depression. We didn't have a word for low self-esteem at that age. It just, you felt terrible as an elementary school child about your body and about who you are. And you grow up with that, having to navigate it on your own, which then can look different for all kids. It can come out in behavior problems or learning problems. And we're trying to look for all of the issues that are underneath. And sometimes it's just an issue of they don't like who they are. And they don't know why they don't like who they are. And it's like that now you're getting confirmation from all the kids, especially the mean ones who are just bullies in general. And So I think it's almost out of sight, out of mind, because you don't see your kids at school. You don't know the private battles that they have to face, you know? And for me, like, I didn't care, but at the same time I did, because I had people say things about me because I was big. I was very unhealthy. Being as active as I was still very unhealthy.
Yeah. And with us, I saw that really manifested just in the way that, because I didn't have behavioral issues at school. You know, I did well in school. I was pretty smart. I was very timid and terrified of everything and everyone. But our home life, that became where we expressed all of our emotional problems, our anger, our frustration, you know, took out our feelings of low self-esteem. We felt terrible about each other or ourselves. So then we argued, we fought, and it just created a world of chaos inside of our home. And I think a lot of that had to do with because we felt terrible, because, you know, it's very difficult to love other people if you can't love yourself. So I saw that, you know, we saw that firsthand because of this. It was a contributing factor to our emotional problems, our behavioral problems, just in our own home. All right. So let's talk about, we kind of looked at it from a childhood perspective, but let's look at what these obese children carry into adulthood, because there are several long-term issues that stem from childhood obesity. So, and I know these are things that we specifically, I mean, and not everything, but there are certain things that you and I have dealt with and had to overcome because we took this with us into adulthood from our childhood. So first thing that we want to talk about is type 2 diabetes. This is a very, very dangerous, horrible disease that wreaks havoc on your body. So I actually found, I think it's a list of 11 things that can result from type 2 diabetes. So one, blood pressure, which if it's high and uncontrolled can lead to stroke. Cardiovascular disease, so heart attack, congestive heart failure, all kinds of stuff that can, you know, affect your heart. Stroke, I talked about that. Vision problems, I know that is sometimes people can go blind because they have uncontrolled sugar. Foot ulcers, which I have seen some in my medical career, some really awful foot ulcers. And eventually, if you can't get your sugar under control, they can cause your legs to be amputated because they can't get rid of all of the infection in your legs. Nerve damage. So I know a lot of people have neuropathy where they can't, you know, they lose feeling, and especially in their extremities. Kidney damage, which if you mess up your kidneys, that is what's filtering your blood. That's getting all of the toxins out of your body. So all of that is just staying in your body. If your kidneys get damaged, you might have to go on dialysis, have a kidney transplant. Depression. So, you know, we've talked about depression in the past and how detrimental it is to us mentally, and then of course physically. Gastroparesis, so that is, you know, basically nausea, vomiting, heartburn, bloating, basically all kinds of gastrointestinal issues. Dementia, tooth decay. I mean, just all of this stuff, all encompassing in this disease that is preventable. And I mean, if we just focus on just that one thing, I mean, listen all the stuff that we could avoid. And this is, it can be so damaging to our bodies.
And when I was researching this, I'm telling you, I almost started to cry, because I think sometimes from a parent's perspective, when you are looking at that child right now, sometimes we get lost in the moment, right? Like, this is my child right now. And like, just thinking it'll all work itself out, not understanding that you can see a long term that your child, if mentally, can't see yet. Your child's brain isn't even fully developed yet. So to perceive the concept of, if I eat Cheetos every single day, when I'm 30, I might have issues. As a child, you're not going to get it. You're not going to understand it. So as a parent, it's your responsibility to not just see your child right now, but to see, what am I setting up in my home right now that could potentially impact who they are as an adult? Because my child might have to fight battles when they are 30 and 40 years old that they didn't have to fight had I not incorporated something in their lives. And I feel like I'm speaking I am giving voice to your child because they don't have a voice right now. And I'm saying on the other side of it, as me and you, Abigail, fight through stuff every single day of our lives that sometimes is so exhausting. And I think this is not fair. It's not fair that I have to fight as hard as I'm fighting. So I'm speaking to the child in your home that doesn't have a voice to tell you that wake up, that what you are doing. And I'm not saying it in judgment. I'm not saying it from because like we said before, I'm not a parent, but I was a child and I am an adult now fighting those battles. And I don't want any other child to have to fight the way that, see, now I'm so passionate, my mic. I don't want every child to fight the way that we had to. Yeah. When I listen to this one. I looked at this. This was they did a scientific study, right? Like, so they were looking at morbidity rates, and they said that even children who had faced childhood obesity and reversed it by getting healthy later on in life, their morbidity rate was still significantly higher than other people. Even people who were currently overweight, the ones that had childhood obesity, they die younger, even if they try to reverse it. That was sobering to me. A shortened life that started at an age where they couldn't control it. That is so serious. To me, that's where the light should go on to say, however I need to fix it. However, as a parent, I need to be inconvenienced. Whatever plans I need to put in place, I am dedicating myself to do it because my child deserves a long and healthy life.
Right. And, you talked about even if they're able to lose the weight when they're an adult. Well, a lot of them are set up for failure and they cannot overcome it and they end up being morbidly obese. I remember I had this health coaching book and I read it long time ago. And when I read this part that I'm about to share with you, it was eye-opening and it made me feel so terrible. I was like, again, like you, this is not fair. I was set up for failure. So I will read it to you. So this is for obesity that occurs earlier in life or during adolescence. So basically through age 13, if you have a BMI that is over 40, which that is considered to be obese. So if you do that, if you are morbidly obese, it can cause an increase in the number of adipocytes, which are fat cells. And then this is called hypercellular or hyperplastic obesity. So basically, this type of obesity, when you are a child and you become overweight and you become fat, obese, which I don't like to use the word fat. That's not a nice word. But anyways, the number of fat cells that you have is increased. So, and you can't really do anything about it. They get there and they're not leaving your fat cells. Whereas unfortunately, for these individuals, no amount of dietary restrictions or exercise can reduce the fat cell number. So you can only reduce the amount of fat that is in each cell. So that's your only hope, is to shrink the number of the fat that's inside those cells. But say, when you were a kid, you had 1,000, and because we had this very unhealthy lifestyle, you were set up for failure, your number of fat cells grew to 5,000. Well, as you're an adult, you still have those 5,000. So your only help, unless you have a lot of money and you can go get it sucked and tucked out, you have those 5,000 cells. So your only hope is to shrink the amount of fat that's in there. Whereas if you, as an adult, gain weight, become morbidly obese, it is easier for you because you have your set number. So you only have your 1,000 that you started off with. So basically those 1,000 fat cells became increased. The amount of fat that was in there became enlarged. So it's easier for you because basically you do the same thing as I do. You shrink the amount of fat that's in those cells, but you only have 1,000 and now I have 5,000. So that's very sobering and it's very sad because now as an adult, I can't get rid of them. And I don't have enough money to have plastic surgery to get rid of them.
Listen,
so sad.
I'm telling you, eventually I'm going to figure out how to do that ice pack thing. In my mind, I figured it out. 1,000 ice packs on my body. I just fall asleep and all the fat gets frozen.
I think you have to get like
to be determined
negative temperatures. This sounds like a giant disaster.
I know.
I do not recommend this
I
at
know.
all.
Or someone watches this website, or somebody listens to this podcast, and they're a plastic surgeon, and they just choose to give it to us pro bono. Listen, we're open. We're willing.
Yes. You can sponsor us. We'll give you an ad. Right. We'll give you ad space.
Right. Another thing is, in addition to that, is obviously an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, which you talked about with the type 2 diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, just the amount of beating that your heart has to do in order to pump through the veins that you're filling with plaque, with all of the fat that you're putting in there. So that is a big one. Now, before we get into prevention, because I know we kind of got on our high horse preaching, we want to bring in Momma Kochek. And Momma Kochek she is going to talk about the perspective of what it was like being a parent and some of the ways that the health fell through the cracks. And then she's going to give us a couple of tips and ideas for how to reverse that. And then we're going to come in after that because Momma Gail doesn't want to be on a long time. So we had to do a lot of convincing. She wants to come in and come out. And then when she's done, we're going to come back and give you a little bit more of some prevention ideas for how do you, if you have kids right now, how do you help them and create an environment where you can either reverse the effects that have already taken place or create a home that encourages health and gives your kids the empowerment that they need to be healthy. So we're really excited today because, as we said at the beginning of the episode, we have Momma Gail on the episode today. Hi, Mom.
Hi. Wow. I'm a reluctant witness.
Yes. And we're so glad that we were able to get the technology to work. It took us around about an hour and a half to do this. And we appreciate our mother's patience and her learning of technology.
Yes. Thank you for sticking with us. I know several times you asked if you could hang up and we told you no, and you stuck with us. So yes, thank you.
We thank you. So, one of the main reasons why we wanted our mom to come on today is because we're talking about something that's super sensitive and that we think is really important. But me and Abga are a little bit at a disadvantage because we can't speak from the perspective of a parent because neither of us have children. One of the things that we've tried to do through the majority of this podcast is speak from the perspective of a child who has grown up morbidly obese and like the issues that have come with it, but we don't have the perspective of a child or a parent. So we were talking to our mom yesterday, and at first we were just going to get her feedback, and then of course with all of her sage wisdom and the beauty in which my mother speaks, we were like, "You have to come on the podcast." To which she said no, and then of course,
no, we made her.
We made her. So, so here she is, Mom, and if you can kind of just start and talk from the perspective of a parent when it comes to raising your kid to be healthy, what do you think were some of the struggles that you had when you were raising us and trying to cover all the bases of raising children and then trying to incorporate health? What were some of the struggles and what do you wish you had done differently?
Well, I was battling my own weight issues, so it was hard to concentrate on other things. After I had my last child, which was Aaron, I lost my weight right away, well, within a couple months, and then I just went on this thing where I just gained like 100 pounds within a year. And I was so frustrated, and I even went to the doctor, and he just said, diet. Duh. And I gave up. And so I said, forget it. If I'm going to be fat, then I'm going to have a good time doing it. So that's what I did. But what I didn't think of at the time, and I should have, is that it have repercussions on my children. And that is something I so regret. And once it started where you guys really started gaining weight, I thought it was like a runaway train, and I didn't know what to do to stop the train. Um, I wasn't really, I didn't know a lot about nutrition, but I think a lot of people my age didn't. My parents, which a lot of parents will like this, you didn't have a lot of food. You didn't go in your kitchen and just decide to snack. You had to have permission to snack. I remember being hungry before dinner, and my mom would say, put some jelly on some white crackers, which actually aren't that bad. Although I'd
Gross.
rather have a little peanut butter if I'm having a choice. But it wasn't anything super tempting, so you didn't really binge on jelly crackers, let me tell you. One or two, and you think, oh, I can't take this anymore. And I always felt fat as a kid, and I look back at pictures, and I wasn't. But everybody was a stick back then. If you were at all overweight, you stuck out. Most everybody was pretty thin or pretty healthy. But then kids were more active. People didn't have pop and candy and chips. We just didn't have that at home at all. So I didn't learn good habits. It just by default. There was nothing to junk on. So when the issue started, I didn't know what to do. And like I said, I was in shock. I don't know. I just don't know I didn't know what to do. And then I also started working because we really needed the insurance. We didn't have health insurance. And so I worked at a grocery store. So then I started working at night because I was low on the totem pole, and that's what I ended up having to work. So you guys were home alone at night a lot, and I'm just not a real great cook either. So I could have been better prepared with the dinners, having stuff more organized. In a lot of ways, I was really organized. I just don't like to cook. Maybe if I was better at it, but maybe if I liked it more, I would be better at it. It's just like, I'm just not very good, and I just didn't really care that much. And then too, like, you couldn't be involved in sports because I couldn't get you there, and I couldn't rely on Dad to remember to take you home from church. There's no way. That is
I wouldn't have been in
not
sports
an exaggeration, as you know.
because I wasn't good at sports, so that's irrelevant to me. I wouldn't have.
But yeah, I think Amy would have really enjoyed sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she would have loved like soccer, anything where you can push and shove and punch and run. She'd been all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that would have helped. And even if Amy got started, then Abigail might have done it, or else they would have played more at home. I don't know. You can't live life two ways. I don't know. Maybe it would have helped, maybe not. I don't know. It wouldn't have hurt, if nothing else. It wouldn't have hurt.
I want to ask a question. So you had talked about, you said at the beginning that you always felt fat, even though you looked back and you weren't. Do you think that attitude and those feelings you kind of either perpetuated in us, or you tried to shield us from, so you didn't put us on diets or, tell us you need to lose weight? Do you think that had any effect on it?
Well, probably, because for one, my mom would tell me to go on diets. And and maybe like I needed to lose 5 or 10 pounds. It really hurt me when she would say stuff like that. My 2 younger sisters at the time were extremely thin, and they were narrow. And I developed really early. So at the age of, say, 14, I'm the same height. I would love to have that body now. And I was really looked like a full-grown woman. I mean, my face, you could tell I was younger, but I had a mature woman body. And I think that maybe that bothered my mom too. She was worried about that. So it insulted me and hurt my feelings a lot. But then I was super sensitive about everything too. So give a hard time to my mom either. But yeah, I think probably I've worried so much that you guys would be heavy. There's obesity in my dad's family, and I was so worried about that. And maybe that made it worse. I don't know.
What from the standpoint of looking back, and obviously you've said, like, you can't live life two ways. What do you think is the one thing that you would do differently if you had to go back and do it again?
I would have done better meal planning, and I would have made myself do it. So, I was pretty organized. I did all the housework. I did all the laundry. I painted the outside of the house. I painted the inside of the house. Anything needed to be done, I did it. So it wasn't that I was incapable, because I get on a roll and I just go crazy. So I just really didn't want to to cook that much. So I would push myself to do that. I would have I don't know how I would have gotten us more active. Maybe I wouldn't have given up with myself, I think.
So, and I wanted to ask that too. So, and not to put anything on you, but do you think that there is credence to that phrase, do as I say, not as I do? Do you think that that would be damaging, or that was damaging in that way, if you are not living the lifestyle that you want your kids to live?
Well, yeah, because the thing is, if you, like with me, I'm just like, who cares? And I'm eating anything. Well, so obviously I'm buying stuff that's there that I wouldn't have bought if I worried about what I was eating. So the stuff was available. It's not like you guys got in the car and went to the store and bought junk food.
Mm-hmm.
Not until you're older you could do it. But when you're 10, 11 years old, you're not doing that. So obviously, if I had been more conscious of what I was eating and cared more, then you guys wouldn't have had a lot of opportunities. And maybe I would have gotten fat anyway. I don't know. But I hate the thought that I just gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, from the standpoint of talking to parents who maybe are in the midst of what you're out of right now, maybe they have very unhealthy children and they know it, and maybe they're unhealthy as well, but they feel like you feel like the train is going, I don't know how to redirect it. What do you think would be advice that you would give to them on the other side of this?
Don't have kids.
Is that what you wish?
No. How dare you? Go through it again.
I will say this though. On more times than not, Mom's intro to all the times when she'd be answering the phone, which is this is like when the phone is in the dining room. I remember this vividly. Every time the phone would ring and Mom be on it, all of us would be in the room like, what's going on? And the first thing Mom will be like is, hello? Yeah, don't have kids. Just don't have them. That was like every beginning of her conversation would be, don't have kids. But Mom, maybe a better one, because they have kids, so we wouldn't want them to murder their children,
or leave them at the fire station.
Yeah. So let's go with the idea that it's irreversible at this point. Let's go with different advice.
I don't know. I think there's so much more stuff. Even when you guys were little, there was a lot of stuff through the schools, not now probably, where you could get kids involved. Because I think a lot of what the difference between when I was young and now is the fact that kids are so sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
And the people weren't real heavy back then, and they weren't really into eating natural and organic, and eat all your vegetables. They were meat and potatoes. They weren't eating chips, but nobody was eating chips. It just wasn't a thing. But they were eating heavy steaks and all this stuff, and all the stuff we think, oh, you shouldn't eat that stuff. But people moved. And I'm not saying they were doing aerobics, but you walked to school, you walked home from school, you didn't sit in front of the TV. All it was soap operas. So you got up in the morning and you went outside and you played outside. And the problem with today is there's crazy people everywhere, so you have to be so careful. So I think there's stuff like the Y, there's stuff at schools, there's swimming programs, there's other things that you can get your kids involved in, that things that aren't competitive, because some things like everybody's not good at stuff like softball and stuff like that. Sometimes your kid's just not good at that stuff. Sometimes they're klutz. I was a klutz, I wasn't good at stuff like that. But there's a lot of things that aren't competitive that you can get your kid involved in. Try to get your kid involved in stuff like that. Watch what you're bringing home for dinner. Watch I'm not saying you have to go and find these recipe books about wonderful cooking, but hey, if you do, great, more power to you. But skip the pop. We never had pop, though. This isn't something that was our issue. But a lot of that stuff, the sugary cereals, the pops, all the stuff they say don't have. When you guys were real little, we used to eat oatmeal, and I'd cut up apples and put that in there and boil it. It was the 5-minute oatmeal, so it would boil and they'd soften up. It was really good oatmeal. And then I just got lazy and got the cereal. Make them eat that oatmeal because you guys loved it. You throw some cinnamon in there. It was a really good oatmeal. So you can train your children to be used to eating certain things. I remember Amy, when she's like 2 years old, eating figs. And she's just chugging those things. I'm thinking, oh, great.
Figs are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to have an issue later. She wasn't potty trained yet, so it wasn't a happy thought. I yelled at Dad's the one that had him. I said, "Pa, quit giving her all those figs." or he'd make ball. It was like granola. He had that homemade granola, and you guys you called it ball because you'd stick your hand in there and make a little ball of it and shove it in your mouth. So there's a lot of things that you can cook, and really kids will try so many things. If we do, it seems like they get pickier as they get older, and maybe part of that's peer pressure. Part of that maybe is just us. We don't introduce them to a lot of different things. And some stuff they won't like Amy hated carrots, and so don't force somebody to eat something they hate. But there's a lot of things. Amy tried all kinds of stuff. Aaron used to like all kinds of stuff, and well, he still kind of does. You guys would eat a lot of different stuff. It's just continuing that adventure, I guess, with eating and not going the easy way.
Yeah.
Like you guys, one time I got you SpaghettiOs, and we didn't really get those. And Abigail said, "Why are you feeding me this poison?" Mind you, you're like 3 or 4.
Oh, wow. Because I totally would say that today. You know what? I did have one more thing I wanted to ask. So I think we've all talked about it before, the 3 of us, just, in our normal day-to-day conversations about emotional eating. Do you think that, how do you think that if a parent is in that situation right now when they are emotional eating, they've always done that, and they are perpetuating that in their children, can you think of maybe some advice that you could give to them on how they can break that cycle, especially in their children?
Train yourself and your kids to desire better things like naan or pita chips or carrots. I remember I taught Sunday school with this woman, and she was talking about when she was a kid. She's a skinny woman, mind you. She was a kid, her favorite thing to eat was green pepper. And she'd rather have a green pepper than a candy bar. Now, there's not too many. This is a natural thing. She just liked green peppers.
I could
I
not
don't think
relate.
that's real normal. Most people don't. Some of it is just we're drawn to that. We're drawn to the sweet. We're drawn to the sugary, whatever. So if you're going to just stock stuff that is going to be good for your kids. I remember when you guys were little and Dad would cut up watermelon. Boy, I miss that because he'd get I hate cutting up watermelons so bad.
He was really good at picking them too. He always picked them.
Yes.
I don't know how
And
he
I
did
would
it.
think, oh, I need a watermelon, but so much work, and then it's so messy. I'm happy when it's done. But he would get a melon and he'd cut it up and he'd stick it in the fridge. And if you guys wanted something to eat, you just go in there and you get some watermelon. Now, some stuff you can't cut up. Like you can't cut up apples and leave them in the fridge. They get all nasty, just like bananas and stuff. But if you have access to stuff like that, that can be eaten quickly, that you don't have to do a whole lot of prep for, then if somebody's feeling, oh man, I just want something to eat, I'm going to eat this watermelon. It's easy to get. It's already cut up. All I need is a bowl. Everything else takes work. So they're going to eat the watermelon.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Like everything you're saying too, it's like practical, quick shifts, because maybe it's not really controlling your emotional eating. Cause I think that becomes so much more personalized, right? Like if you've trained yourself into emotionally eating, you're the one that's going to have to work through that. So it's like, if I feel like emotionally eating, okay, but if all that I have is watermelon in the house, that's going to be a very different emotional eating experience, as opposed to if I have ready like little Debbie snacks, which I know we didn't usually have. But if there's but if there's like little Debbie snacks, then it is a very different experience. It's empty calories. I'm going to eat more, as opposed to if I'm eating watermelon, I have like a few pieces and I'm like, oh, I'm about to explode.
Okay.
Mother, Momma Gail, as you are so lovingly called, we thank you so much for joining us today under duress, but we're still glad that you decided to join us. As always, your wisdom that you've given us from day one has always been appreciated. Now we just get to share your wisdom with a larger crowd who I know is very grateful for you. And you are now and have always been world's number one mom. We love you.
Okay, I'm not doing anything else on any other.
Sure you are. You will.
I'm just saying. I'm done.
We'll see.
That's what they all say, Mom. Plus, Aaron already has you as a guest on his podcast, so
I know that's the last one because I haven't done anything for him yet. But that's it. After that, you guys are done.
All right, we love you. You can hang up. Thank you, Mother.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right.
Bye.
All right, so let's get back into it. So we are going to bring this all to a conclusion with is how we can prevent this, how we can help our kids, how we can break this cycle so that it doesn't keep happening. So one thing that you can do, and this is a very easy thing to do, is to limit sugary beverages. So of course, number one is soft drinks. And we already know, I remember hearing the statistic that in 1 can of Pepsi, there is 1 cup of sugar. And you would never get a measuring cup of sugar and hand that to your kid and say, go sit on the couch and watch TV and eat this cup of sugar. But you're giving them pop or soda, however you refer to it. But it is filled with sugar. And another thing, not just pop, because that's the obvious one, but there are so many sugary drinks that come under the guise of healthy juice that are just, they're 5% juice, 1% juice, and then it's sugar, sugar, sugar. So if we just take that out of the equation, we are already jump-starting it and really helping to take some of that sugar away, because sugar is the devil when it comes to obesity.
Yeah. seltzer water that has a little bit of flavor to it, that has 0 sugar, that still gives like the version of pop. Obviously, pumping filled with water, that is just so important because that's something you're going to need to learn on later on in life anyways. But finding some alternatives too, if your kids just don't want to drink water. But for me, like, there is a value in saying there's not an option. Momma Gail was always good with that. It was, if she said something and you said, well, I don't want to, her response is, I don't remember asking. So once again, like, you know better, right? And your kids might fight against it, especially if you're trying to reverse it. It's much easier to introduce it if you've already are on the path of health. But if you're trying to reverse something, there's going to be pushback. And the pushback should just be, listen, you don't understand. I am helping you in the future. It's not a discussion. This is what's available. And just like Momma Gail said, don't allow certain things in your house so that they're not available. The next thing is limit screen time. Screen time is just a way for your kids to once again be sedentary. And it just encourages sitting in front of things and snacking. So limit that time to less than 2 hours a day. That's what the professionals are saying, even for young kids. They're saying if your kid is under 2, 0 screen time. But if they're older than 2, 2 hours a day is sufficient. Anything over that's going to have some negative ramifications, specifically from the standpoint of just not moving around. And then, of course, we know this as adults, when you're in front of some screen, for some reason, you're like, my hands are bored. Let me get popcorn. Let me get chips, and kids are always wanting a snack. The answer is either no or get an apple, like it's not, you allow certain snacks in the equation, but less than 2 hours a day is a good key for time frame.
Right. And also try to introduce as much as you can fruits and vegetables as a snack. And it doesn't just have to be fruit. I know I always loved cucumbers and I still do to this day. So I could sit down with cut up cucumbers, tomatoes, put some salt on it. I'm good to go. So any opportunity that you have, and again, with the socioeconomic problems and issues, those choices are more expensive. But if you think about it, if you are buying a lot of junk food, like we talked about, it's empty calories. Your body is still hungry. So your body is eating more. So if you put it into perspective, okay, I can buy this fruit, but my kid is only going to eat, or I am only going to eat just this fruit. Whereas if I buy this bag of chips, I'm going to need to eat 2 bags of chips because my body's still going to be hungry. But there are so many nutrients in fruits and vegetables, and we as a society do not get enough. So I cannot recommend it enough to have that food in your house and take away the option. Like Momma Gail said, you take it out of your house. And if you're going to go for a snack, that's fine. You're going to go for the watermelon. I don't have anything else for you. Otherwise, sorry, you're going to have to starve.
Yeah. Another one is eating meals as a family. And I know sometimes this can be difficult if you work, but trying as much as possible to create meal times that make eating a pleasure and an event. Because sometimes when you're not doing that, like eating can just be like secondary, like you're just eating, doing other things. So it's mindless. You're not enjoying the moment. You're not thinking about what you're eating. You're just eating. And I know for us that we didn't, as we got older and our parents worked so much, we weren't eating at the dining room table. We weren't making an event. We were sitting in front of the TV. We were snacking all day. So make sure that you're trying to incorporate times where you can just eat as a family, talk things out, talk about the meal. Like, I think there's value in explaining to your kids, why are we choosing these foods? Like the why behind what you're doing can be very effective. When I was a teacher, I always told my kids why, even if they said, I don't want to do it. Well, I don't care, but here's why. If I'm telling you, I don't want you to get up and walk around, I'm not just saying because I said so, because that's not enough of a why for you to hang on to. But the why is your education is important to me. And I understand that that's a distraction to you, and I'm minimizing your distractions. Now it gives them something to hold on to. So if the why is, I am feeding you these things and I am limiting your screen time and I'm making you, or I'm having you move more, it's because your body is the only thing you have. When you personalize it to them and you include them in the decision, it becomes a communal thing where it's not just me just being the mean one and saying, no, no, no. It's me saying, I am setting this up for your good. And if you own it now, it's going to be something you'll own in the future.
Right. And even involving them in, if you're if you're having issues with cooking, if you're not one that likes to cook, involve them in the process. You never know, you might have a future chef in your house. So, get their input, have them help you, have them, cut up things or measure stuff out. And that's a way for them to, you develop relationships, you get them involved, you get closer, and then they have an input. Just like you said, they have a say in their own health. And also limit your times going out to eat. First of all, it becomes more of a special time when you don't do it all the time. Second of all, it's very difficult to control what you're eating when you're out to eat. Portion size are huge. Calories are huge. You often don't know what's in there. You don't know the nutrition facts. So, and when you do, teach them to make wise choices. Show them, this is not, the chicken nuggets, that's not an option, but they have this really good grilled chicken. You're going to like it. You're going to try it. So limit that. And when you do go out to eat, make it fun and make it a healthy option. Make it something that they can be involved in as well.
Yeah. Another thing is sleep time. So we talked all about sleep last week, and I'm still gaining nuggets from the sleep time. But sleep time is also important for your kids, like setting a routine, because remember, we talked about this last week. A lot of times your eating choices and what you want to eat have a lot to do with your sleepiness, right? So sometimes a kid might be wanting snacks or just nagging you for something sweet or something salty merely because they're tired or they didn't get good sleep. So making sure that they're on a good routine of sleep so that they are getting replenished as much as possible, because it's just as important for kids as it is for an adults in the health process to have enough sleep.
Mm-hmm. Right. Also, and I talked about portion size with restaurants, but when you are at home, adjust your portion sizes. A lot of times, especially with me, if the food gets put in front of me, I'm going to eat it. So I think a lot of times kids do that. It's just because it's readily available. So if you would normally give them 2 cups worth of food, give them 1. And if they're still hungry, let them ask for more. But a lot of times they will, if it's in front of them, especially if they're sitting in front of the TV and you give them, a bowl of popcorn, they're just going to keep eating. So watch your portion sizes, because sometimes it's not even what you're eating, it's how much you're eating of it. So that's one thing you want to watch out for.
Yeah. Another thing is involving them in sports or activities that can either be at the school that they're going to. If they're not in school, you can find so many area opportunities for them to get involved, because activity, being active, being a part of a team, there's so many benefits that surround it. But getting kids as active as possible, that's one thing that I've said about myself, and of course, Momma Gail has confirmed, I wish I had been in sports, because I've always been active. Even now I'm active. And I think that would have really helped with my health journey to harness my activity, so that when I got a little bit older, I got real sedentary, which wasn't me. But if I had been in sports, I think that would have really benefited me. Or activities. It gets them involved. It gets them doing things so that they're not at home after school snacking until dinner time. There's just so many benefits that go along with that.
So another thing I want to bring up is activity. And I'm not talking specifically about working out as, a structured workout. So not, we're going to go on a bike ride right now, kids. Okay, kids, we're going to run a 5K, get your shoes on, let's go. This exercise that I'm talking about is called NEAT, N-E-A-T, and it stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, it means getting up and just moving around, because as you said, being sedentary is the new smoking. It is so damaging to your health. So there was a study done that it demonstrated that obese subjects sat 2.5 hours per day more than their lean subjects. The lean sedentary volunteers stood and walked for more than 2 hours per day longer than obese sedentary subjects, even though all subjects lived and worked in similar environments. So maybe you say, okay, we're going to have screen time for 1 hour. And then at the end of the hour, we're all going to get up and we're going to walk around the block. Just a nice slow pace around the block. And then we'll get back and we'll do our other things. We can do like you did when you said you first started, when we talked about the turning point, when you got up and walked around the couch during the commercials. So it's basically getting up and moving your body, even if it's just 5 minutes.
I think it's important when we're talking about movement is to make movement fun, include your kids, laugh through it, have a good time. Don't make any of this a punishment, because I know for us, like we had older grandparents they were my dad's parents. They were both immigrants, and their mode of like talking about health was shame based. It was like my grandma would make us go on walks and it was never fun. And it was like, you're big, get outside and walk. So then it like created like this like really distant relationship with health, and it made the idea of health connected to shame. So even when we're talking about really helping your kids, health education is so important, but educating outside of shame. We're not educating with the idea of you're so fat and disgusting, let's start getting healthy. And let me put you on every diet in the book because people are going to make fun of you. Like sometimes I think parents think shame and making your kids feel bad about themselves is the way to go. That's in the opposite direction. So we're trying to find a healthy balance. We're not trying to shame our kids into health, but we're also not trying to ignore it. You are trying to create a healthy relationship with healthy foods and exercise so that kids understand that this isn't a punishment. This is a way of life to help you live longer, to help you be happier about your body. So when it comes to health education, it is really important for you to involve your kids in the conversation. So when we're talking about involving them in the conversation, we are talking about sitting down and talking to your kids about when you're eating food, why are fruits and vegetables better than Cheetos? And just really getting specific. Answer those why questions. Get your kids knowledgeable about what happens in your body when you eat. You don't have to get out a science book. Make it simple for them. Why are we getting out and moving? Why are we creating opportunities? They have those places that just have trampolines. Take your kids there and say, do you know why we're doing this? Because moving is fun. Because when we move our bodies, it gets those endorphins. And endorphins are those good things that happen in your body. Answer those whys as specific as possible. And the other thing to do, introduce healthy foods as early as possible. Because what happens is that what will happen, your kids' taste buds will begin to shift. I know we had these neighbors that live behind us, and their parents are like really specific with what they eat. And I remember they had something called carob. If you've ever had carob, it's just the disgusting version of chocolate.
It's not even chocolate at all. I think basically it has the consistency of chocolate, and then they poured it into a chocolate chip mold. And they were like, taste these, they're so good. And I'd taste them like, blah,
disgusting.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed to eat sugar. So for them, they thought it was great. They thought it was delicious.
Yeah. So it's all about shifting your taste buds. I know for us, like when we started shifting what we ate, my body started craving better food because I was feeding it better food. So like we said, if you are beginning your health journey, introduce your kids from a young age to healthy foods so that they're not already craving sugar and preservatives. But if your kids are at the point of craving sugar and preservatives, get it out of your house and start shifting the options. Now, they might say at first, I hate this. Okay, well, that's okay. You don't have to like everything, but this is what we're doing because I understand that this is what is best for you. So the greatest encouragement that we can offer you is make health a priority, first of all, for you. Because I think the one thing that Mom said that was so powerful to me was when we asked her, what would you change? It was, I wouldn't have given up on myself earlier. That blew my mind because it's like, it wasn't like I would have taught Amy and Abigail better. It was, I would have been a better version of me, because the best way for your kids to learn is to watch you be a better version of yourself and educate yourself and plan out your meals and exercise, because then your kids will want to mimic that, because we mimic what we see and not always what we hear. So when you stop giving up on you, then your kids won't give up on themselves. So create a plan for you, create a plan for your family. Let it be a priority just as much as you organize with your cleaning and your working and your schedule. Organize your meals. What meals are you going to put? What snacks are you going to make available? When you're packing your kids' lunch, what are you putting in their lunch? Care about what your kids are eating and what they're doing throughout the day, because it's not just about now. It's about what's going to happen in the future. And your kids' future should matter to you now. It shouldn't just be their decision about their future, because you're setting it up right now. So I hope that this week empowered you. Our goal was not to beat you down, but if you feel bad, sometimes it's okay to feel a little bad. Because it put a check in for me. Because my check-in for me is right now, I want to be the best version of myself, because if I
Mhm.
do have kids, I don't want my kids to be so hyper focused on health that they don't have fun with life, because there is a balance to everything. We're not saying never give your kid an ice cream cone or they can never have a bag of Cheetos. Balance in everything. But I also don't want my kids to go through the same struggle as I did, and you should want that as well. So when
Right. And I think too, so what you said, it's good to feel bad. I feel like if you feel bad right now, that shows that you're a good parent because you care. But I mean, be encouraged. If you feel terrible right now, that's good. That is good, because that will lead to change. And it shows that you love those kids so much that you're willing to hear uncomfortable, hard things, and you're willing to break the cycle. So
Yeah.
be encouraged. We love you.
We do. We love you and we care about your family. So we hope that this inspires you to get more active as a family. So this is not just about you as a family, and really empower yourself and your kids to be the best versions of yourself. So thank you so much for joining us this week. We want to send a special thank you to our mom. We love you, Mom. Thank you for joining us. And as always, like we said at the beginning, like, share, send us an email. How did this email impact you? What are some things that you maybe are struggling with? Let's start the conversation. But until then, we will see you next week for yet another episode of Just One More Cookie.